And I have honestly never seen a company fumble the bag so hard like the WNBA fumbled Caitlin Clark. It sucks that so much of it was riddled with so much drama and so much negativity.
The WNBA had never seen anything like this before. For decades, the league had tried everything to break into the mainstream. Slick ad campaigns, rebrands, slogans, endless pushes from broadcasters and sponsors. And yet, for most of its history, it lived on the margins of American sports. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, came Caitlin Clark. And she wasn't just another promising rookie. She was the kind of lightning in a bottle that leagues wait lifetimes for. Her rise didn't start in the WNBA. It began in college, where Clark became a phenomenon at Iowa. Game after game, she wasn't just filling box scores. She was rewriting them. Her logo-range three-pointers turned arenas into cauldrons of noise. Kids imitated her on playgrounds, trying to mimic those impossible shots. Every highlight felt viral. Every performance felt historic. She wasn't simply breaking women's basketball records. She was shattering viewership records too. By the time she walked onto the court for her final college games, it was clear. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a player. She was a cultural moment. And the numbers told the story better than any hype ever could. Her college games drew millions of viewers, often rivaling or even surpassing men's broadcasts. Entire sports bars that had never tuned into women's hoops suddenly had Clark on every screen. Social media clips of her deep threes racked up millions of views in hours. For the first time, casual fans were talking about women's basketball as if it were the Super Bowl or March Madness. So when the 2024 WNBA draft rolled around, it wasn't just another event. It was a coronation. The league had been handed its savior, the once-in-a-generation star, who could finally drag them into the mainstream. Every camera was pointed at her. Every headline had her name. The Indiana Fever, long overlooked, suddenly found themselves at the center of the sports universe, simply because Clark was wearing their jersey. And instantly, the effects rippled across the league. Tickets for her debut games vanished within hours. Resale prices spiked so high that fans joked they were buying NBA Finals tickets, not regular season WNBA seats. Entire arenas sold out, not just for the first few weeks, but for the entire season. Fans who had never once thought about the WNBA were lining up, desperate just to see her in person. The Fever's attendance alone shattered precedent. By the end of the season, over 200,000 fans had packed into their games, a figure that wasn't just impressive, it was historic. To put it bluntly, no team in WNBA history had ever pulled numbers like that. Not close. Caitlin Clark hadn't just raised the bar, she had redefined it. But it didn't stop at the gates. On television, viewership spiked 21% across national broadcasts. Sports networks that had once treated women's basketball like an afterthought were now leading their primetime lineups with Clark's highlights. She was everywhere. Talk shows, podcasts, front pages. The WNBA had begged for mainstream relevance for 25 years. Caitlin Clark handed it to them overnight. And let's not forget merchandise. Jerseys with Clark's name sold out so fast that even NBA players took notice, commenting that they hadn't seen anything like it since LeBron James entered the league. Kids lined up wearing her number. Grown men bought Fever gear despite never having rooted for the team in their lives. Clark wasn't just selling merchandise, she was selling identity. In a single rookie season, Caitlin Clark accomplished what decades of league marketing could not. She made the WNBA part of the national conversation. Every sports show, every headline, every viral clip revolved around her. She wasn't just a player, she was the engine keeping the league alive. And that's exactly what makes what happened next so baffling. Because if you had asked any fan, any sponsor, any broadcaster in those early weeks, the story seemed obvious. This was supposed to be the beginning of a new golden era for women's basketball. The WNBA finally had its star, its savior, its ticket to legitimacy. All they had to do was protect her, promote her, and let her but instead, they fumbled the bag. And what started as the perfect fairy tale was about to turn into a brutal lesson in arrogance, short-sightedness, and betrayal. For all the ticket sales, the sold-out arenas, the record-breaking TV ratings, Caitlin Clark's official reward from the WNBA wasn't respect. It wasn't protection. It wasn't even acknowledgement of what she was doing for the sport. It was a contract so insulting, so laughably small compared to her impact, that it turned a fairy tale into a betrayal written in black and white. 4 years. Total value $30. Do the math and that's about $85,000 per year. Think about that. The player who had just injected life into the entire league. The athlete responsible for headlines, ratings, merchandise booms, and mainstream attention was being paid less than a mid-level accountant, less than some assistant coaches, less than what thousands of young professionals make in entry-level tech or finance jobs. And if that sounds bad, wait until you see the comparison. Because across the street, in the NBA, the #1 overall draft pick signs a rookie contract worth $55 million over the same 4 years. That's not a typo. $55 million versus $338,000. To put it another way, Caitlin Clark was earning 162 times less than her male counterpart, despite pulling numbers that rivaled or even outpaced NBA stars in terms of viewership. This wasn't just about money. This was about symbolism. That contract told the world, in no uncertain terms, what the league thought of her value. Not as a cultural phenomenon, not as a ratings magnet, just as another rookie. Disposable, replaceable, cheap. The message landed loudly. Fans were outraged. Social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons of NBA versus WNBA salaries, highlighting how the very player who was keeping the women's league alive was the one being most disrespected. Sponsors, commentators, even casual fans who had never cared before started asking the same question: how is this even possible? And here's where the betrayal cut even deeper. That contract wasn't simply a bad deal. It was a statement that Clark wasn't going to be treated like the superstar she was. That no matter how many arenas she filled, she would not be elevated above the system. But the league forgot something crucial. When you devalue a player on paper, it doesn't stay on paper, it bleeds into everything else. Opposing players saw that tiny contract. They saw the lack of protection. They saw the league's refusal, fuck its own star. And the message was clear. She's fair game. Clark wasn't being guarded like a future of the sport. She was being treated like prey. And once that precedent was set, it was only a matter of time before the disrespect moved from balance sheets to the basketball court. Because if the WNBA wasn't going to protect its golden ticket, then who would? The contract wasn't just a financial failure. It was the opening shot in something much bigger. A slow, steady unraveling of trust, respect, and safety that would ultimately leave Clark broken, sidelined, and questioning whether the league she saved was ever worth saving at all. But the betrayal on paper was only the beginning, because the real damage came when the disrespect turned physical. And what Caitlin Clark endured next would shock everyone watching. The contract may have been the first betrayal, but the real humiliation came on the hardwood. Because once Caitlin Clark stepped into the WNBA spotlight, it didn't take long for opponents to realize something crucial. The league wasn't going to protect her. From the opening tip of her rookie season, Clark had a target on her back. She wasn't being defended like a promising young star. She was being hunted like prey. Hip checks that sent her sprawling to the floor. Elbows delivered when the refs weren't looking. Shoves in midair when she went up for a shot. Off-ball collisions designed not to defend her, but to break her down. These weren't hard fouls. They were statements. And the message was clear. You might be the league's new golden child, but to us, you're just another rookie. Welcome to reality. What made it worse was the silence. The referees swallowed their whistles. The league office looked the other way. Every shove, every cheap shot, every dirty play was tacitly endorsed by officials who refused to step in. And fans noticed. Social media lit up after every game with clips showing Clark being thrown to the ground, blindsided or elbowed in the face. Analysts pointed out that other leagues, whether it was the NBA protecting LeBron or the NFL protecting quarterbacks, always went out of their way to shield their stars. But in the WNBA, their biggest asset was left to fend for herself. The disrespect wasn't just physical. It turned ugly. One incident in particular burned into fans' memory. Cameras appeared to capture Brittany Griner directing a racial remark at Clark during a heated game. The clips spread like wildfire. Lip readers dissected every frame. Outrage poured in. And yet, once again, the WNBA did nothing. No investigation, no fines, no suspension, just silence. The pattern couldn't have been clearer. The league was more than happy to plaster Clark's face on promotional posters, to sell tickets on her name, to flood broadcasts with her highlights. But when it came time to defend the very player keeping them alive, they vanished. And that neglect came with a cost. Because while a bad contract is humiliating, while public disrespect is frustrating, it's the physical toll that breaks an athlete. And for Caitlin Clark, every uncalled foul, every extra shove, every dirty hit added up. Game after game, she carried not just the fever on her back, but the bruises of a league that refused to protect her. The breaking point came on September 5, 2025. The announcement landed like a bombshell. Caitlin Clark was officially ruled out for the remainder of the season with a right groin injury. Headlines tried to soften the blow. They called it bad luck. They framed it as an unfortunate accident. But fans knew better. This wasn't some random twist of fate. This was the months of unchecked aggression, months of whistles swallowed, months of deliberate punishment finally caught up. Her body didn't fail her. The system did. Clark's injury was preventable. That was the bitter truth. And it wasn't just a tragedy, it was a turning point. Because when the brightest star in the league goes down, not because of her own mistakes but because of her league's negligence, the entire foundation cracks. And as Clark sat on the sidelines, forced to watch the game she once electrified, others were watching too. Rival leagues, investors, billionaires. They saw the WNBA's golden goose broken, unprotected and disrespected. And unlike the WNBA, they understood exactly what she was worth. The vultures began to circle. But these weren't scavengers. They were opportunists, ready to offer Clark something she had never been given before: real respect, real protection, and real money. And the first to make their move would shock the basketball world. Caitlin Clark's injury should have been the WNBA's nightmare. Their golden ticket was sidelined. Their brightest star was suddenly gone. But for Clark herself, it became something else entirely. It became leverage. Because while the WNBA sat back, counting ticket sales and quietly hoping she'd heal in time for next season, others saw an opening, and they weren't about to waste it. The first move came from a new challenger, Unrivaled, a 3-on-3 league founded by some of women's basketball's biggest names. Unlike the WNBA, they didn't see Clark as just an employee to squeeze into a fixed contract. They saw her as a partner, a cornerstone, someone to build a brand around. Their offer wasn't just about salary. Yes, they put millions on the table, more than double what the WNBA would pay her over 4 years. But they added something much more powerful: equity, an ownership stake. It was an invitation to step beyond being just a player and into the role of a decision maker. For the first time, Caitlin Clark wasn't being asked to sell tickets and take hits. She was being asked to help shape the future, to have a real voice, to build something that could last. The symbolism was staggering. For months, the WNBA had devalued her, treated her like just another name on the roster. Unrivaled turned around and said, "We see you, we believe in you, we want you in the boardroom, not just on the court." That alone would have been enough to shake up the basketball world. But then came the bombshell that nobody saw coming. Because while Unrivaled was making waves, a music legend stepped into the conversation. A man with a history of defying systems, disrupting industries, and putting his money where his mouth was. Ice Cube. Through his league, the Big Three, Cube made an offer that instantly exposed just how badly the WNBA had miscalculated. Word began to spread that Cube was prepared to offer Caitlin Clark not thousands, not even millions over years, but $15 million for a single 10-week stretch of basketball. At first, fans didn't believe it. It sounded like a publicity stunt, a headline grab. But then the numbers came out and they were real. Let's put it side by side. The WNBA had Clark locked into a 4-year deal worth $38,000 total. That's about $85,000 per season. Grinding through a 40-game schedule, taking cheap shots night after night. Ice Cube turned around and said, "How about $15 million for 10 weeks? It wasn't just a better offer. It was a public humiliation. It was Cube standing on the rooftop with a megaphone, shouting to the world, the WNBA has no idea what their most valuable player is worth. And that changed everything. Because now, the conversation wasn't about whether Caitlin Clark was underpaid. It was about just how badly the WNBA had failed her. Overnight, the narrative flipped. Sponsors, fans, and media couldn't ignore it. The comparisons weren't subtle. They were plastered everywhere. $85,000 for a season. $15 million for 10 weeks. Which side valued her more? Which side respected her? Which side understood her worth? The Big Three's offer wasn't just money. It was validation. It confirmed what fans had been shouting since day one. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another player. She was the WNBA. She was the ticket, the ratings, the merchandise, the conversation. Without her, the league was nothing. And suddenly, the power dynamic shifted. For the first time in WNBA history, a player wasn't trapped. She wasn't stuck under the thumb of the league. She had options. Real ones. Options worth millions. Options that gave her something no one before her had ever possessed: leverage. From that moment on, Every negotiation, every sponsorship conversation, every contract meeting had a shadow looming over it. $15 million. The number hung in the air like a storm cloud. The league could pretend it didn't matter, but everyone knew it did. Because now, Caitlin Clark had proof that she was bigger than the league itself. Proof that her true value wasn't measured in 6 figures, but in 8. Proof that the WNBA needed her far more than she needed them. And that's where the revenge truly begins. Because Clark doesn't have to sign the contract. She doesn't have to leave tomorrow. The damage is already done. The fact that the offers exist is enough. Enough to remind the WNBA every single day that they failed. Enough to show the world that their savior has options they can't control. The WNBA thought they owned Caitlin Clark. But now, Caitlin Clark owns the future of women's basketball. The only question left is whether the league will be part of that future, or whether she leaves them behind in the dust.